Good evening, morning, afternoon, depends on which part of the world you are in. My name is Dhruv Sahai, and welcome to episode 71 of Unboxing AI by Kapil. For the uninitiated, Kapil is the world's largest imaging AI platform and marketplace, offering over 200 solutions from 80 plus AI providers. Our mission? Simple. We seek to connect radiologists the world over with the best AI solutions that are out there. And on that note, I would like to introduce our guest for today's episode, Anthony Eigier. Anthony is the CEO and co founder of NeuralMed, a Brazilian health tech company that leverages artificial intelligence to transform healthcare management. With a background in entrepreneurship and technological innovation, Anthony has dedicated his life to building solutions that enhance operational efficiency and improves the patient journey across hospitals, health insurers, as well as the pharmaceutical industry. And now over to the man of the hour, Anthony. Why don't you start by introducing yourself to our viewers and give us a little idea of why you do what you do?
Thank you. Such an honor to be here participating with you guys. Thank you so much for the invitation. So I think you mentioned, right? So I today am the CEO of NeuralMed. It's a company that we started in 2018 with the idea to, most importantly, help the healthcare system make better decisions. We focused a lot on how to help the workflow work better and how they make better decisions. This is something that we've been focusing ever since the first day, ever since the first product, ever since the first prototype, was always how do we help the healthcare system without having to substitute any healthcare providers, any doctors, really become this aid for a system that's so stressed for time and stressed for decision making and stressed as a whole, be it monetarily, be it as healthcare workers, be it as patients also. So that's where we focus most of our company. It's 100% focused on helping the patient at the right time, anticipating care, making sure the healthcare system as a whole works better. I think you're on mute.
Yes, my Zoom auto muted itself. I don't know why. Okay, so no, that's great, Anthony. I think, but what I would like to know more about, and I think what our viewers would like to know more about, is why did you choose this path? I mean, what led you to do this?
It's a great question. So I came probably from the most unusual way to get to healthcare. Uh, my father was a doctor. My grandfather's a doctor. So you would assume there one more doctor in the family. And I did the exact opposite. I went to school for economics. I went to work in finance for a long time. And then one day figured it wasn't for me. And I've always been a tech geek at heart. So I started my first tech company in 2011, and then my second tech company in 2013. This second company was very successful. It was a company focused on mobile games. So we were developing games for cell phones, iOS, Android, everything. So it was the beginning of the mobile game transformation. And then around 2015, 2016, the company was doing very well. And I had this feeling myself that all I was doing was obviously, which is very good as a professional, was focusing my entire life on making money. And something more important was cooking inside, right? And I had this word that was so important for me, it was legacy. What's going to be my legacy for the world? What's going to be a legacy for my children? And this couldn't be just a bank account. I needed to do something better. I needed to leave the world in a better place than when I came in. And then, obviously, after a long career, I came back to healthcare. I went to work in healthcare to figure something out. This was about 2015, 2016. All I could hear about healthcare was everything, healthcare is getting too expensive, healthcare is going to collapse, the margins are getting hard. And when I asked them, all right, well, and what's innovation? How are you going to solve this problem? And the only responses I would hear was, we have this new MRI machine. We have this new CT scanner that now has 256 channels. Like this, that's not efficiency. That's just more cost. The system can't handle this. And coming from until for the last big part of my career, a software founder, like software is going to be where we're going to find innovation. We're going to find efficiency. So I worked a couple of years in the healthcare sector looking for this, and that's when I found this thesis that we created for NeuralMed. So it was a combination of needing to find my legacy and knowing that healthcare needed to change. It couldn't stay the way it was. And innovation wasn't going to come from hardware, it was going to come from software.
It's interesting, the statement that you make that healthcare needed to change. Of course, I mean, I think like everything else, it needs to evolve, and to make sure that accessibility is something that gets better as we go. What role do you see, AI playing in it? We've heard so many conflicting opinions on the use of AI in healthcare. What are your views on it, or some experiences that you could probably share?
Great. So I think AI as a whole, in any sector, but most importantly in healthcare, I feel like healthcare was where everyone thinks is going to be the biggest impact. AI is a tool, like any other tool. And we've seen other tools change completely sectors, but never substitute the professional. The human is still going to be the most important part of the workflow on both sides, on the patient side and on the clinical team side. And we've seen this in other sectors, right? So when we had uh, Uber or any other kind of ride sharing, we still have taxis and they still work and we still have people driving. Maybe driving will be something that we'll have to discuss in the next couple of years. But uh, when we have computers with word processors, like, that's the end for reporters. We no one's gonna write a book anymore because of typewriter. Like, no, everyone's still writing. We still have this human side of the decision making. And I think in healthcare it's even more important because healthcare is not an exact science. Even though we try to make it exact science, it's a science based on exceptions. Every single human is an exception to that science. And that's when we can really notice these changes. So this exception is where I think the human is always going to be active. And then I think it's just going to be one more tool. And I think the most cliche phrase, but I think the most real phrase is that doctors aren't going to disappear because of AI. But doctors that don't use AI, they might have trouble finding continuing their careers in a long in the long term. And that goes for doctors, that goes for nurses, that goes for journalists, that goes for research people, that goes for any uh high value job in the world will be empowered by this. It's one of the most powerful tools we've seen in the last decades.
I often draw this parallel. I'm 100% in agreement with what you're saying. And I often draw this parallel where I compare the AI movement of today to what IT was, in the late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't going to replace or take away your job. It was the people who learned how to use it to their advantage to improve efficiency. They were the ones who were going to take your job. So I feel and you rightly summed it up. AI is nothing but a tool that you can use to your advantage, and those who will use it to their advantage will always have the edge over those who don't.
Yeah, and I think radiology, we're talking about radiology specifically here. We've seen this happen in radiology, maybe not as quickly, but when we moved from film to PAC servers to DICOM based machines, there was the same thing. This is the end of the radiologist. The radiologist is going to die. And that wasn't true. What changed? Right? People that reveal film, that were in these dark rooms making sure the film was developed, maybe that job doesn't exist anymore, which is good, right? It was a highly toxic job. We had a lot of toxic
Yeah.
waste, but the doctor is still there. We actually have seen a rise in radiologists ever since PAC systems started. So again, we're always going to have the human in the loop. And in healthcare, I think there's one next step. So obviously, we talk about radiology. We're talking about a doctor looking at a screen, but you have to remember that when they're doing they're writing a report looking at a screen. There's a patient behind this, and someone's going to have to call that patient into a room and tell them, "Look, patient, you have maybe this disease, this alteration, and you're going to need care." And that's not going to be an AI. That's not going to be a bot. That's not going to be something, especially for high risk diseases, right? We're talking about, for example, cancer, one of the most triaged, looked for things in radiology. It's not going to be an AI agent on WhatsApp that's going to send you a message. It's like, "Oh, hello, we just saw your scan. Maybe you have cancer." That's not going to happen. It's going to be a
Yeah.
human looking in your face, there for a hug, and that's not going to be substituted by AI. The workflow is going to be quicker. You're probably going to get that diagnosed much faster. We're going to find more people than we found before, but the human part is still going to exist.
No, I absolutely agree. I think a human in the loop is always going to be there. But now at least what we see how AI is being adopted in different parts of the world, and we often see that some countries are faster to adopt it. The laws are more well, let's say, open to accepting AI. I mean, what has your experience been? I mean, if I was to tell you to draw a parallel between the Brazilian market versus rest of the world, or let's say the American market and the European markets, how has your experience been?
I think this is something that's very interesting. I think Brazil used to be always later with help with technology in general. We were always on a delay, like a 5 to 10 year delay. But this new movement in tech with I think it kind of leveled the playing field, right? So we're talking about countries that normally have are on the second tier as far as technology adoption, have the chance to be following very quickly. So Brazil was quick to address AI regulation, uh, how we talk about privacy with laws, and we see this. So we started this company in 2018. When we started, it was before LLMs and before this widespread adoption of what AI is. Once this happened, it was a cosmic shift. We could see doctors that were worried about like this is I don't want this in my hospital. This is magic. I don't have no idea what this is. To wow, this is amazing. Come sit next to me. Let me see what you have. And I feel like we've been very, very fast in Brazil compared to other places in the world, which is not normal for a country like Brazil. A country like Brazil is normally late with other technologies. Most technologies arrive later in Brazil. I mean, as far as we talk about Sao Paulo, we talk about these big cities, but once you go to the rest of Brazil, we're still a third world country with a couple of first world cities. But now it's like everyone. I mean, we see grandmas and cab drivers using AI. So the mass adoption made it very, very, very go very fast. And Brazil has been always a very internet friendly country. So I feel like that was also one of the things that pushed us forward a lot. So the patients want this, the doctors want this, the hospital administrators want this, and the government reacted surprisingly fast. Obviously, it's the role of the government to protect the population. So they put a lot of constraints, but they're doable, right? It's not constraints that make it impossible to work with. It's constraints that make it work, which is pretty exciting for to be in Brazil at this moment. I would love to. I don't know how India reacted to this, but it would be very interesting to see as a country that is often compared to Brazil as far as coming from a simpler country to industrializing and growing quickly. Obviously, in a different scale.
Yeah, no, so India has, of course, I mean, there's always been the early adopters in terms of technological innovations. In the radiology sector, I would say it's not where, let's say, Brazil is right now, but that's also because, and this is something we can talk more about, is, with AI solutions that are coming up, they are usually working on large volumes. So they need a large number of scans. In India, the healthcare system is scattered. So you see one big hospital group in Brazil would own hundreds of little centers and hospitals all over the country. India works a little differently. So there are national level projects. There are disease based projects which are looking at AI adoption. For example, lung cancer, tuberculosis is big, is something that the Indian government is looking a lot at for using AI. And it's interesting that you mentioned, how grandmas and taxi drivers are using AI in Brazil, because I recently invested in a pair of glasses that can translate Portuguese to English, and my phone can read it back out, and it works seamlessly, and it's incredible. I believe now the new Apple AirPods also have this inbuilt feature, so I think it's really solving a lot of problems. But I mean, of course, I do want to talk more about you. So I'm going to jump back to that. I do, it's very interesting. You said you have background in finance, and now you are literally in imaging AI. How do you navigate this challenge? Because I myself am from a non-clinical background and I'm in this industry. How do you navigate this challenge of when you're talking to radiologists, when you're talking to clinicians, taking their feedback, incorporating it, understanding what the need is that you need to cater to? It'll be great to hear about that.
I think that's a great question, and I think it's one of the things that I use a lot. So at the end of the day, we base ourselves a lot on statistics, and doctors know that they have to work a lot with statistics. So when I talk to radiologists, I remember the first time I had a conversation with a doctor about what I was doing. It's like AI for healthcare is going to be useless because all I need is my office to be long and skinny. Because by the time the patient gets from the door to my desk, I know exactly what he has. I don't need anyone to help me diagnose this patient. It's like that's amazing. You're an amazing doctor. I'm sure you can do that. The problem is, statistically, you don't have one patient outside your office. You probably have 100. And I need to tell you which ones are the first ones that need to walk into your office. Because some of them might not be alive or might not be healthy enough to get there by the time you get to number 98, which might be the most critical patient. And I think that's the conversations we bring. So we bring the idea of how do we normalize this into numbers that everyone can feel. And a lot of times it's not just the doctors, right? The decision makers in the hospitals are the CFOs, the CEOs, and we forget about this, but healthcare is a business, and they need to understand why using these kind of technologies is going to make their business more efficient. Be it because they're going to make more revenue, because they're going to save money, or going to be able to be more efficient with the assets that they have, because it's pressured by the financial side. So being able to sit down and have this financial conversation on a deep level with them, say, look, I know either you're gonna use AI to make your solutions more efficient, or you're gonna have to invest $500,000 on a new wing in your hospital. And this kind of conversation is something that, coming from finance, we can talk about capex and opex, and they understand this, and they see that we're there, not just telling them, look, this is going to be another $1 million solution that is going to be great for your patients, but you're going to have to figure out how to pay for this at some point. It's like, no, this is something that's both great for both sides. Your patients are going to have a better quality of life. Your doctors and your nurses are going to have a better life, but you're also going to have a better financial and a bottom line at the end of the day. So I think that's one of the things that's also very important, because healthcare is a business, and we have to be able to bring this as a business. And I think we're seeing every day more people come from outside of healthcare into healthcare, because it's such an important market. Every single person in the country is a potential client, right? So everyone is touched by healthcare. It's not something that's, even though it's a niche business, but every single person in the world is touched by healthcare. So everyone is starting to understand why it's important, and why we have to start to challenge what's always been like this in healthcare. We recently reorganized our sales team with the same idea. Like, everyone's like, sales cycle in healthcare is very long and it takes a long time. And it's like, why? Let's challenge this. We're startups. Let's challenge this as a business standpoint. That's what we stand for, right? As startups, we're here to challenge the status quo. And it worked. We've started having much shorter sales cycles. So these challenges are really interesting to bring from outside of healthcare, and then mix this with healthcare once you're inside and working every day.
Yeah, so the finance actually plays as an advantage,
Yeah.
in helping you speak with healthcare providers in adoption of AI. That's great. On that note, also to all our viewers, I mean, the chat box, the Q&A box are both available for you to ask questions. And I do see a couple of questions coming in, so we can start taking them. So there's one by Dr. Suresh Mukherjee. Dr. Suresh Mukherjee is a very well-known radiologist, and he asks a question: from a business standpoint, do you feel future of AI companies are those which offer like a per click, per inference kind of payment model, or do you feel a subscription model is a better business?
I think it depends a lot on what the end solution needs to be, right? So if we're talking about, as far as an AI provider, right, an imaging solution provider, if we're talking about high cost solutions for MRIs or CT scans, as you have a lot on the Purple portfolio, probably a per scan solution makes sense. But we at NeuralMed focus a lot on emergency rooms and triage, a lot on chest x-rays, the most common radiological exam in the world. And for us, we've noticed that a subscription model with unlimited exams has been working very well in Brazil, because, again, such small margins in chest x-rays, a lot of volume. And when you start having to like, should I send this image or not? In an emergency scenario, maybe it's not the ideal. So we position ourselves like, look, we're unlimited volume. You have a subscription model. You can buy the subscription, and then it allows them to send every single image and not the ones that they think might be altered or not altered, and really work as a full co-pilot, not just looking at some things, but looking at every single chest image that went through the hospital. So I think there's no ideal answer because radiology is so broad, but for some scenarios, this subscription for unlimited works well. For others, maybe not. For example, we have providers in the world today selling very specific models for triaging rare diseases. So maybe you're only going to send altered exams to this solution, and then you're going to pay per analysis, and then you're willing to pay more for a specific analysis versus paying less for a very broad analysis. So it's going to depend a lot. And I think, like anything in the world, right? We're able to subscribe for things that are, I'm going to subscribe for my entire Netflix channel because I want to watch everything. But maybe this one amazing IMAX movie in the Sphere in Las Vegas, I'll pay a one-time, very expensive ticket. So I think we this hybrid has been working very well. And I like to use these analogies because we're used to doing subscription for video, but we also do one-off payments for very specific things.
That's a great analogy. I hope marketing from Carpal is listening. Netflix versus the Sphere in Las Vegas. So, no, great. I think, also now jumping a little specifically into your offering, Abhishek from our tech team has a question, and this is an interesting one. He asks, so what is the most critical differentiator that positions your platform, vis-a-vis the major tech companies building foundation models, as well as established EHR providers entering the clinical intelligence space?
Perfect. So I think this is an amazing question because, and I could talk ages about this, so please interrupt me if I go too far.
Please
But
go.
basically, we started this company before LLMs. So we really had, literally in our office, we had a server rack with 10 machines with 10 GPUs doing trainings that would take 10, 15 days on top of specific data sets. And because that's how you did AI pre-LLMs. You had to train these models and label images, pay doctors or nurses to label images and look, this exam has a pneumonia, this exam is normal. And we train these models, and all of a sudden we have these LLMs that can kind of read anything. But again, we can't just assume that they're always going to be right because we know they're not right. Everyone that's used their Chat GPT or Gemini or anything of the sorts to ask questions, sometimes you'll notice like, yeah, maybe you're not that right. And healthcare is a space that we're not really sure how lenient we want to be with. Maybe you're not that right. So we've been focusing on our solution on training with real data and only validated data. So ever since we started, we've only used real data validated by doctors and use this as our training base. All these companies are coming in. A lot of them are using these internet-based databases. There's a lot of wrong data in the internet. And that's not just because of Google. One of the first data sets that we had was for AI back in 2018, 2019 was one of the NHS databases that was a Kaggle competition for RSNA. Some people might remember this. And a lot of the database there was labeled as, for example, pneumothorax. But a lot of the images on pneumothorax there, they already had the cannula. They were already treated. So the device was what was indicating that this patient had pneumothorax. He was already treated. And anyone that's a doctor listening knows that you need to find pneumothorax before it's treated, not after. Before they put a chest tube, right? So you need to find the patient before the chest tube. After the chest tube, someone's already done it. So this kind of training makes a big difference. So that's one of the big things that we differentiate ourselves. Our real database, validated by doctors and trained with the real, like as a true AI model. Obviously now these are changing into small language models on top of these large language models that we can use as basis, but it's always being validated by real doctors and real clinical professionals. And then the second thing that we really differentiate ourselves in is how we bring this back to healthcare. We really believe that us as a AI provider, we have to position ourselves as a triage solution and not a diagnosis solution. What does that mean? It means that we focus on separating normal from abnormal exams in the emergency room. Our AI might be able to say if there's a nodule or a pneumonia, it might, but it's not, we don't believe it's our place. So we separate normal from abnormal so that whoever's the technician, the nurse, the doctor who's there can be quicker to make the decision on what's the next step for this patient. So that's how we position ourselves. And that changes completely from other providers, which have a positioning of trying to find very specific diseases or nodules or alterations, which I think is a great market, but it's not what we believe as far as how we want to position ourselves.
And then I think that's a good way to proceed. Uh, on that note, we actually have a question on what the model, how you're training the model. It's by an anonymous attendee. They ask, how do you ensure that the model is being trained and monitored on unbiased data?
Yeah, so being trained on unbiased data is a large question, right? So we've seen a lot of studies in the United States, for example, that data was racially biased, right? Because, for example, with breast scans, we have a lot of the database that's public run on very specific data sets that involve mostly white women, and a lot of the data wasn't trained on other ethnicities, which is one of the realities of the US healthcare system. Brazil has a very, very diverse data set as far as population, not just data,
Mhm.
right? Naturally, very diverse population. And we've been focusing a lot on using our data set from, we're in Brazil. I think we missed this part from the entire conversation, but we're located in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Our company runs most of our clients here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Our data set comes from both public and private providers in Brazil. So we're able to have a very diverse data set. So as far as normalizing the type of patient that we have behind that scan, that's one of the things we do. The second thing we do is obviously having a data set that's validated by physicians, real physicians. So we developed our own platform where they open an image and it's like, here is this kind of alteration, here is that kind of alteration. And we use multiple physicians to validate the same database, and always for continuous training, the same thing. So a certain percentage of all exams are sent back to continuous training. And we like to use multiple different physicians because we have a joke, an internal joke, that if you have one scan and you show it to three doctors, you're probably going to have four different diagnoses. Uh, so we like to have this variation in physicians because when they don't agree, we need a third physician, and we need to find what makes more sense and trying to normalize this. And that's how the ways we try to uh, make our decision making the less biased possible. Hopefully
Yeah,
that responded to the question.
it did. I mean, I also think that when you have data sets and when you're operating out, let's say, a territory or a jurisdiction which has a diverse population, it does has its own sets of advantages because the model does get to train on different data, so it would definitely be diverse. So I do think
Yeah.
that that is an advantage.
And not only diverse as far as patients, but also one thing I forgot is the diverse as far as machines, right? You probably know as well in India, probably have similar issues with Brazil, that we have a huge variety as far as quality of machines and maintenance of these machines. So we have hospitals using the most modern digital X-rays, and we have a lot of hospitals still using CRs to digitalize their X-rays. A lot of them with artifacts on the images because these machines aren't as well maintained. So you have to be able to remove the bias also as far as it will only work on the newest 2025 model X-ray machine. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about Brazil. We have to be able to work on the newest machine, but also on this analog machine that's been digitized with a CR that the chassis has probably some kind of artifact, and it has to be able to help there. And I think that's one of the one of the ways we can remove bias, because if not, it's not a truly solution that works for Brazil. It works for the expensive high-end hospitals in Brazil, and the rest of the country is kind of forgotten.
Yes, absolutely. I think with that, Anthony, we are on time, but that has been, I mean, this has been an incredible 30 minutes speaking with you. Knowing more about you, knowing more about NeuralMed. And thank you so much for joining in. Also, thank you everyone, all our viewers for joining us for yet another informative and insightful episode of Unboxing AI. We will see you next week, same time. And wishing all our viewers a very happy Diwali as well.